Hey there, homeschool reading community. Welcome to this Facebook Live all about fine motor skills. I am so excited to be here today with Lisa Shipster, who is a mom, a teacher, and an expert in fine motor skills. And she is going to be sharing all of the tips and advice with us today. So I'm super excited to be back with you for our Wednesday Facebook Live class series. And if you are just joining us, please say hey in the comments and let us know that you're here. And if you're watching on the replay, please say hey as well. This is going to be an awesome class, so we are going to jump right in. Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I'm so glad that you're here today.
Hi, thanks so much, Sarah, for having me, and thank you so much for everyone who's here today. It's so exciting to share this stuff with you today. Sure. So my name is Lisa, as we've said, and I love to empower and equip moms to help their kids succeed in school and beyond. And that all starts developmentally, So so you'll see my blog is learnwithconfidence.com. And I think as our kids' moms, and I know, Sarah, you believe this as well, as our kids' moms, we have a really special role in teaching our children. And that comes from, to be able to read to them, to be able to teach them how to read, but also in their fine motor skills and in so many other areas as well. So that's something I'm very passionate about, and I really love to teach about that. So my husband and I have 3 daughters. They are all under 6. Our youngest is 2, and then we've got a 4-year-old, and then our 5.5-year-old. So yeah, you can all relate to this comment that being a mom is the most awesome thing, but it is also the most difficult job we've ever done. I'm sure you can agree. And just to see our kids grow and develop, it's just so awesome. And to be part of that is amazing. So I'm also a grade 5 teacher here in South Africa. So that is your upper elementary, I think, there in the States. And I've been teaching for over 10 years in those kind of grades, 4 to 6 and grade 7 as well. And I've seen how education is really affected by those early developmental skills. And so that's where I'm really trying to focus a bit more in helping moms, because I think that if we can iron out some of those creases early on, it can help our children so much more when they're a little bit bigger and they have some of the struggles that they have that we really could have helped with a little bit early on. So,
I love that. Yeah, setting that foundation when our kids are young is so important. And that's why we focus so much on reading here in the group. And that's also why fine motor skills are so important. And I love that perspective as a teacher of a little bit older kids in 5th grade, just to be able to see what that impact has been for them. And now to come back and really help the younger kids to start and be successful from the beginning. So let's break it down and talk about this from the beginning. So tell me about fine motor skills. What are they and why are they important to us as parents?
So fine motor skills, when we talk about fine motor skills, most people think it's just pencil grip and being able to use scissors, but it's so much more than that. And if we can sum it up, it's really just being able to use our hands for different tasks. And in your hands, you have like 30 or so muscles that must all work together and use the right amount of strength and pressure to perform different tasks. So it's, think about zipping up a zipper on your jacket, or even turning the keys in the lock. Think about tying shoelaces or tying up your hair. My kids have now finally managed to tie up their Barbie doll's hair, and I'm like, wow, like you've actually managed. Do you realize how many skills you need to be able to do that? None of us even think about it as adults anymore because it's so natural, it just comes so naturally to us. But children have to actually develop those skills. They actually have to learn how to use their hands effectively. So that's how we can sum up fine motor skills. And I think you asked me why they're so important as well. And there's 4 kind of areas where we see why they're so important. And the first is obviously academic. Like we think of the academic needs of a child, being able to write, being able to build models, let's say, or form numbers, or being able to be able to do all those things in school. And obviously, the younger they are assessed according to that. And even in your homeschools, I'm sure there's a way that you assess them according to if they've met those needs or not, or met those requirements. But when they go beyond that, beyond academic, we can also talk about their self-esteem, being able to use these fine motor skills for personal care and even for hobbies, using those gifts that they've got. So yeah, if I can just speak to academics a little bit more, um, it goes beyond just being able to write with a pencil. Think about that child who struggles to write, like for whom it's really hard. It's hard work. They end up having messy handwriting. They're demotivated. They're not going to do as well academically because they're not motivated to do that, and it's not easy for them. So if we can put some things in place early on, we can help that child to enjoy school and enjoy these things that are actually not so difficult, just because they have the skills to be able to develop that. Yeah. And then in terms of self-esteem, we know confident children succeed more. And we build confidence by building competence. So if we can try and master those skills in a fun way for our children, and help them master those skills, then they really do a lot better in school in general.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I love that. I love that idea that competence builds confidence. I think that's so true in all areas of education, not just in fine motor skills. And I think the more that we can encourage our kids and help them build that competence in whatever skill area they're working on, the more confidence that we'll see. So I love that. And I love that reminder that it goes beyond just whether our kids can use a pencil or use scissors, because those are important skills, right? But that it really has that deeper impact in their confidence and in their self-esteem and just in their motivation and enjoyment of learning. That's so key for us and so important for what we're trying to instill in our kids as homeschool parents. I love that.
And
So
I mean,
let's talk.
you can see this fine motor development, like I mentioned earlier, with things like tying hair and brushing their teeth, and this kind of these personal care things that we don't measure that. There's no academic mark for whether they can brush their teeth properly, but these are ways that they actually are showing that they're competent in their fine motor skills. So think about brushing your teeth, for example. Like, just next time you do it, consider how you hold a brush and how you move around your teeth and how you change the position of your wrists and the pressure with which you press on your teeth with the brush. All these things are the things that your child develops when they're developing their fine motor skills. So there's that as an example. Think about eating food when a baby first starts, and we'll talk a bit more about the stages and things just now. But when they first start picking up food, to know how to pick it up, how to hold it, how to bring it towards their mouth, that banana that it inevitably gets squished in the hand because they haven't learned that proprioception of how hard to press onto that object or not. All of these things are why fine motor skills are so important, because we want children that can brush their teeth, and we want children who can use the toilet more easily. Everyone, all you boy mamas out there, I'm sure I'm talking to you now. But yeah, even the chores that they do, being able to hang up clothes on a wash line or wipe up a mess, those actually are fine motor skills that we're not even thinking about how our children develop. But they're really important as well.
That's so fascinating. I have never thought about brushing your teeth quite in that way. I'm definitely going to be thinking that the next time I brush my teeth. I love it.
That's all you're
Okay.
going to be thinking about next time.
I know, right? That's awesome. So let's get into some of those specifics by age, because I know that as a homeschool parent, one of the struggles that I think a lot of us can relate to, I know one of the struggles that I have is that I don't see my kids in a classroom with their peers on a regular basis. And so sometimes it's hard to know when we are on track and when we're behind or ahead. We might not always know that just because we don't see that. So is there some benchmarks that we can be aware of for different ages? And how do we know what skills to be working on with our kids?
Definitely, because I have a huge list here, and we'll go through it as efficiently as possible. But before we do that, I just want to say that development happens in a huge range, of what is normal. And I think it's really important for us as parents. I remember when our first little one came along, and I read something, I think it was one of those what to expect books. And I loved the way that it said how normal is such a huge range. We're going to give you the average numbers, but the bottom end of that range and the top end of that range are really big. And so when we give a number of your child needs to be able to do this at a certain month by this month, That's a general average kind of amount. And so we need to remember that, like a child who might be struggling with building that skill, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get it. It just means that maybe they need to take a little bit longer to get it, and that's okay. So that range is really important to remember. And then also our job as parents is really to give them opportunities. So just like with language development, we know that when babies are exposed to language more, and correct language, not that kind of like baby talk, that they develop their speech development is much better as they go on. So it really helps to then speak a lot to your babies. And it's exactly the same with a lot of the other skills that we teach our children. The more opportunity they get to use the skills, the more they will develop it. So for example, with like threading beads, for example, if you've never given your child a shoelace with beads, for example, they will never be able to learn that skill. And so later, when there's a threading exercise in their lives, maybe as they like want to sew on a button, or they want to, even thread the laces through the holes in their shoes, they might find that more difficult because they haven't practiced that skill before. So we want to give them as many opportunities and create an environment for them where they can learn these skills. And it may look different for different cultures, for different areas. That's okay, but they'll still develop those skills as they go. Okay, so let me say this as well. I will send you a copy of this list because it is extensive. So I'll make sure for all of those who are watching, I'll create a link and Sarah can share it with you so that you've got the free resource for yourself. Okay, so
sounds good. I can definitely do that.
Sure. If we talk about babies, we're talking 0 to 1 year. So 0 to 6 months. Like our fine motor skills are developing from the moment that we're that small, from 0 to 6 months. And so what we call that is mostly the gross grasp, which is the entire hand grasping things. They're really learning to move their hands around a lot. They're reaching for objects. They say by 6 months that they can control reaching actions and retrieve objects. But when they hold objects, it'll be with 2 hands, or it might be, by 6 months, they can usually hold one object in the palm of their hand. So if you have an 0 to 6 month old baby in your family, that's kind of what you want to be working on, giving them opportunities to reach for things. And when they're on tummy time, to just put that block just a little bit further so that they have to practice that reaching action. Okay, and then 6 to 12 months, they obviously can do all of the things before, but we're going to add a few more skills onto that. So now they can bring that object to their mouth. And that's when we really have to watch out because they put all sorts of things in there. And they can also start to release objects. So it's not just about picking it up, but being able to release it in control as well. And there you can get your little one to like put like those plastic balls from one bucket into another bucket. And that's a really good way to practice that skill. They're starting to pick up objects with their thumb and forefinger, and they can start to move objects from one hand to the next. So transferring them from one place to the next. They also, because they can bring their hands together in a controlled way, they can bang objects together. So give them 2 blocks, give them 2 instruments, give them something where they can actually bang together. And then they start to point at things. You may have seen this if you have a little one this age, pointing at things with their index finger. Being able to do that is a skill. We never even think about that. But being able to hold back these 3 fingers and being able to just use your index finger to point, it's a skill. It's development in their hands. All right, and then toddlers, which we call from 1 to 4 years old, 1 to 3 years old, let's say 1 to 3. They can do now a lot more things. And this is kind of where we have these explosions of development and all the fun things that go with it, like those meltdowns, etc. But here for fine motor development, they can now stack things. So blocks are a really good one to play with them at this stage, wooden blocks or Duplos they find quite difficult still to be able to learn how they stick together. So that'll come a bit later. But yeah, they can stack blocks, they can turn pages in a book, even if it's like 2 pages. Obviously, like I said, the range is enormous. And if you have a child this age, that 1-year-old and a 2-year-old are very different children. And their range of skills is hugely different. So your 1-year-old might be turning a whole bunch of pages at once, whereas a 2-year-old is a bit more structured in the way they turn the pages of a book. They can turn knobs, so now you got to watch out for all the containers in your house that might get opened, or at the shops, as we saw the other day, when I just went into one of the shops and started opening things. It was lovely. Kids, yeah. They can eat more independently now at this age, and they're starting to use a spoon. They can start to use a cup. And when they're coloring and painting, so we haven't even talked about pencil grip at this stage because their hands are not developed enough for that yet. So when they do paint or color, they're usually holding that crayon with their entire hand, and there's a lot of like whole arm movements. There's no wrist control yet. That will come as they continue growing. So from 2 to 3, this is kind of where my youngest is sitting right now, and I can see her being able to do all of these things at the moment to varying degrees of competence. So yeah, so they're being able to string beads onto a shoelace, for example, big beads. We're talking that kind of the size. We're looking at building a tower of bricks or blocks. So instead of just 1 or 2 blocks together, they can now stack up to 5. They start cutting with scissors. It's truly terrifying when your child gets hold of a pair of scissors and they start snipping away at some paper, but it really is just snipping papers to bits. And a really fun exercise for this is to actually use Play-Doh. So let them cut up the Play-Doh as much as they like. It actually works the muscles in their hands really well because they have to stretch the scissors open quite a lot, and then they have to push down quite hard to get through the Play-Doh compared to like a really thin paper. They're using their thumb and finger to hold crayons now, and while they can't do that tripod grasp just yet, they are starting to get that they need to just hold 2. They can control it with just 2 instead of the whole hand. They're still doing scribbles, and in terms of puzzles, they can start putting puzzles like a pegboard type of puzzle where it fits into a hole. Instead of the jigsaw puzzles or the interlocking puzzles. And this is also the age where we see hand dominance. So we're starting to see that your child is more right-handed or more left-handed. All right, and then as we continue, we've got preschoolers, which are 3 to 4 and 4 to 5-year-olds. So my middle child fits into this age group, and even my eldest kind of does some of these things. Is still mastering some of these as well at 5.5. So we can say that by 5, they must know all of this stuff. But it's not really true because their development is different. And as I said earlier, the more you're exposed to different things, the more competent you can be at them. Okay, so just a few examples for the 3 to 4-year-olds. They can start to trace on thick lines. They can copy shapes. They can dress themselves and brush their teeth and their hair, maybe not so well, so keep brushing those and helping them out. They can start to do interlocking puzzles now. Which I love puzzles because it's not just fine motor development. There's so many developmental skills that are actually being practiced when they do puzzles. So it's a really good one to work with. And now is a good time at 3 to 4 years old when you can start working on their pencil grip. And I'm going to give you a really nice way to remember or help your child remember to do that in a moment. All right. And then lastly, they also can use their helping hand, their non-dominant hand, to support the work of their dominant hand. So if they're cutting with scissors, they're using their non-dominant hand to hold the paper and move the paper around, or to hold the paper while they're coloring. All right, and then the other preschoolers who have 4 to 5-year-olds, let us know in the comments if you have a 4 to 5-year-old as well, so we can see which age group we have there. Sarah, if you can just keep track of that, and we'll see if there's anyone who wants to share that with us.
Yeah.
But they are able to cut along lines quite well. I can see this is starting to develop in my second, and my eldest can do this really well already. They start writing their name at this age. They can start drawing their own pictures that actually make sense. They're not just blobs on the page, and they can start to copy even letters and numbers and shapes. So they're also good at interlocking puzzles. So and this tripod grasp is really starting to be something they can actually do. And the motion comes from their wrist now. So whereas the motion was coming from like a whole arm movement, it becomes more of a wrist movement now. And what we want to get to, which you'll see just now when we get to the early elementary kids, that we want it to be in their fingers, not in the wrist at all. We want their wrist to be stable and their fingers to move. So, but it progresses to that point. Okay. And then our 5 to 6 year olds, Sarah, which is your early elementary? 5 to 6 or 6 to 7?
I have one who's turning 5 in just a couple of weeks. She's so excited about that. And then my
Oh, cool.
oldest is actually 7. He's going to be
Okay,
8 over the
perfect.
summer. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to talk about them now. So, yeah, so for that 5 to 6 year old range, that's also my eldest is turning 6 in June. So she can cut out shapes really quite neatly. I'm quite amazed sometimes at what they can do. They can paste things on and they can make their own little cards and things, all independently, which is really nice. They can brush their teeth and dress themselves, and I think there's a moment where you start to realize I'm going to be able to do a few things now as a parent because my child can actually be independent. They're not going to depend on me for all of that stuff all the time, which is really nice. So yeah, they can write their letters and numbers independently. Lily will sometimes grab a piece of paper and start copying words from a magazine, or, which is great to see her practicing those letters. They aren't formed very well yet, obviously, but that time will come. And then that tripod grasp is something we really need to focus on in this age group. So let me tell you about a really easy way. I just don't have a pen. Oh, I think I do. Hold on. If you want your child to hold their tripod grasp correctly, so tripod meaning these 3 fingers together, we want to fit the pen or the pencil in that gap. So these 2 fingers are tucked in and these 3 fingers are doing all the work. So I heard it from my child's preschool teacher, actually, which was really good. She said to draw 2 dots with a permanent marker on the edge of the pencil or the crayon where these 2 fingers are going to go. Okay, the thumb and the index finger. And then you put 2 dots on their finger as well. And they must match up the dots. And that's how, and then the 3rd finger just fits underneath. So the way that she reminds the kids is that this pencil is like a little snail, like Slinky the snail. And you have his glasses on your hand. So if you want to put Slinky's glasses on, you hold the pencil correctly. And so whenever my kids are practicing at home or whatever, then I also say to them, don't forget Slinky's glasses. And then they quickly correct it and they're ready to go. So this is something you can start really early when they start this pencil grip at about 3 years old. But by 5, 6 years old, they can automatically be getting into this grip, which is really helpful. So there's a quick and easy, fun way that the children will actually remember it as well.
That's so cute. I love that. Oh my gosh. I'm going to try that with my son today. And I love that it gives them something to be able to correct themselves and to check the pencil and see if those dots are matching up with where their fingers are. That's so smart.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard
and
that before. I love that.
They don't have you on them the whole time. Check your pencil grip. Check your fingers are in the right place. It's a really simple, like, check Slinky's glasses on, and they automatically know what that means, and they can fix it, which is really great. So yeah,
that's so smart.
Yeah, okay.
I love it. Yeah. So if you have a question for Lisa, what? Okay.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you have a question for Lisa, go ahead and drop those in the comments of the video. And if you're watching the replay, please drop your questions for Lisa in the video as well. I will make sure that those get to her and that she gets a chance to answer them. Can we talk a little bit more about handwriting, though? I know that there were parents that had questions in the group this week about handwriting, and I know that handwriting is definitely a struggle issue for a lot of us. It has been for my kids and my family as well. So do you have any tips for working with older kids who are struggling with handwriting? Like maybe we've worked on the pencil grip, but like if handwriting is still a struggle, are there other things that we can try, or what else can we do?
So challenges with handwriting can be quite complex. There's so many things that can actually cause that problem. From things that like autism or dysgraphia, which are like serious, diagnosable conditions, to things like your visual motor skills. So how's your child's eyesight? Can actually see things clearly. That's something that a lot of people bypass. And if we can iron out that one, then everything goes better, I feel like I heard you mention something about your son's eyesight. And like, you'll know exactly when they can see, then a whole host of other skills kind of fall into place that there seem to be all these delays on. So that's something to definitely consider. But it might even be some of these things that we talked about the tripod grasp, but there's so many other fine motor skills and things that they'll do. Their visual spatial awareness. Do they understand with the size of the letters on the page? Can they place those letters on the lines effectively? Can they space them out? I know for my eldest, who's now just learning to write and practicing those letters, and there's very little pressure on her to do that right now at 5 years old. So that's really fine. It's round about. I'm just looking back at my list here quick. Around about 6, 7 years old is where we start to see pencil control, and they are able to write on the lines more effectively. So it's not just that grip, but it's a lot. It's a lot more than that. Even things like proprioception. Do they know how hard to press into the paper? Sometimes children are pressing really hard. Sometimes children are pressing really softly, and so they can't form those letters properly because they can't feel in their bodies how hard to press. And there's so many other things, even down to things like self-esteem and motivation. Does your child feel like they can do it? Are they positive about learning writing? Do they love it, or do they completely hate it? Because that has a huge effect on how much effort they're actually going to put into their work. So those are some of the questions you want to ask yourself. The best way to do this is to eliminate things as we go. And I know that can be a bit of a longer process than just saying, okay, well, that's X, Y, Z. So you eliminate that. Eliminate the eye, the visual, motor control. Make sure they can see. If they need glasses, they need glasses, and that's fine. If they need to be more motivated and they need to enjoy their work more, see how you can increase the fun in it. Is it a motor skill problem that they need to work out? The best thing to do after you've eliminated some of these things, and it's still a challenge, and I think this was one of the questions that somebody asked in one of the chats earlier, was that when we get to a stage where we don't really know what else we can do, then we need to refer. We need to go to somebody else. And the people you want to look for are the occupational therapists. They are the true experts in all of this, and the educational psychologists, because they'll be able to see exactly where those delays are, where your child's strengths are and where their challenges are, and how to help them best with that. So just a few ideas though that I will give you for some of those like fine motor skills we've been talking about. It's easy for toddlers because we just give them Play-Doh and they build the strength through the play with Play-Doh. But for older kids, you can't just give them a clump of Play-Doh and hope that they'll, enjoy playing. Some might, but most won't. So just a few examples. Beading, making necklaces and bracelets for their friends. You can make it like a really fun friendship activity. Building Legos and models. Some of the boys might prefer to do something like that. Model airplanes or trains, or putting little Legos together. It's a really good fine motor development skill. And then if you can't get them to play with Play-Doh, let them play with fondant. So let them create cake toppers that, there's loads of YouTube videos they could follow, they could check out. But as they're forming the cake toppers and models out of fondant, they're actually using the same skills they did when they were little and they were using Play-Doh. So that's an idea. And then let them help with DIY activities around the house. Let them screw in the screws. Let them paint. Let them do the sanding. All of those things are going to use those fine motor skills more. And then even crafts that they might enjoy, like mosaicing or scrapbooking or journaling, where they'll use those fine motor skills a lot.
I love that. I love that reminder to keep practicing the fine motor skills outside of the pencil and paper activities, even when the kids are older, because I know that we did a lot of Play-Doh when my kids were young, but now with my oldest, he does Legos and stuff, but I'm not as intentional about having him do those activities. So that is a great tip. I love that. And I love that
and
you
that's where they
started
have
with,
fun.
yeah,
That's right. We want them to have fun, and we want them to develop those skills by having fun. Kids' language is play. That's the way that they communicate. That's the way they process their world. So the more play we can actually incorporate into their world, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things I thought that was so interesting that I learned about fine motor skills a long time ago was that it's like a muscle. So all these little fine motor muscles are muscles in our hands, and just like when we do a really strenuous workout and we get tired and our muscles get sore, our kids' little fine motor muscles get sore too. And so if we can continue to help them to build those muscles with these activities like you're saying, then we can help make the process of writing literally not as painful for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is so cool.
And absolutely. I think, we talked about why children struggle academically. When we see children struggling with handwriting, and I think we'll talk about this a bit more now, but it's not just in their hands. A lot of the stability that they get for using their hands comes from the rest of their body. So if they're struggling with their posture, for example, that it's going to make it more exhausting for them to be holding themselves up and to be writing at the same time. If their hands are tiring out because they're not holding their pencil, this is why pencil grip's important. Somebody asked me the other day, like, why even is it important to have the correct pencil grip? Who cares how you hold a pencil as long as you can write? And some people have the most neat handwriting with the worst pencil grip. But the bottom line is that if they have the right structure in the way that they write, it becomes less painful and more easy. And when a child has to write a 3-hour exam or something crazy like that, or an essay, or even a paragraph, if they're finding it really difficult, then if we can build those skills and those muscles, it really does help to make education a lot easier for them.
So that was actually Kelly's question. Moving to some of the questions that we got from the group, Kelly said she wanted to know about pencil grip, which I think we've covered, but then she wanted to know, when is correction necessary? So it sounds like it's necessary if it's impacting their handwriting, or is there more
Yeah.
nuance to it than that?
Yeah. And developmentally, remember we said that around about 3 is when they start to learn how to hold this grip, even 4 better. So the earlier we start, the better. And remember, I think, I often thought as a grade 5 teacher that OT was completely useless at this age. But it's not useless. And these kind of corrections are not. It just takes a lot more work and it takes a lot more time. Because remember, all of this is brain development. The way our body works is because our brain tells it to work in that way. So when your child has a poor pencil grip, or they've been curling their hand round like this to write, they have built a neural pathway about that. So we almost have to go back and correct that and teach them a new neural pathway, which means they can't walk that path all the time. They have to choose a new path. They have to constantly be reminded to choose a new path. That's hard for a child, especially when it's comfortable to write with the incorrect grip. So it really helps them to, if we do start that correction as early as possible and start that training as early as possible. But if your child is at an older age and they have a poor pencil grip and they're finding it difficult, it's a drag, they're not motivated, they don't want to do any writing, it's probably because they're finding it tough. So if we can get some of that right, then we're going to find it a lot easier later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's helpful for clarifying. Thank you. Elizabeth had a similar question. She said, teaching autistic children, do you correct pencil position or just let them figure it out? And then she also said, my student is currently 6 and loves doing circles and nothing more. All coloring, writing, etc. is circles. So, do you have thoughts about that?
Sure. So I actually called in some occupational therapists I know about this one, because autism is a really complex condition, and I think the range of skills and delays can be really big. You can have a very high functioning child with autism to a really delayed child who's really struggling with it. So it's hard to give a definite, yes or no answer for this, because there's so much more that is at play. But one of them said that the circle drawing could be like a self-soothing technique. So, the biggest thing with this is that a child who's being diagnosed with autism is in a treatment kind of program. So whether they have therapy with an occupational therapist or with someone else, or an educational psychologist, there will be a professional, or there should be a professional that should be closely related to this case. And I think that that would be my best advice would be to take it to the OT and to deal with it as a case by case kind of situation. It's really difficult to, say all autistic children with this issue, we should do that. Correcting pencil grip for this child might be traumatic for them, might be really difficult because they found it soothing to draw in a certain way. Another thing to think about is that for some children, it's about functionality, not perfection. So for this child, it might be functional that this child can hold the grip incorrectly, but gets writing done. And that's the most important thing for them. It could be too difficult for them to be able to change their grip, and unnecessary because it's still allowing them to write. Will it be more difficult later? Perhaps, but there are probably a host of other things that we want to concentrate on rather than, just focusing on that. They're functional in that sense that they can write. That's what's important. So I hope that answers the question a bit. I think, the best advice would be to take it to the professional who's working with the child closely, and that, what works best is that everyone works together for a child who's struggling with this. So the teachers, the parents, the therapists, if everyone works together and puts the same things in place, you see so much improvement. So it's really worth it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's something that I'm learning the longer that I homeschool my kids. I think at first I thought that as the homeschool parent, I had to do everything. I had to teach everything and I had to be everything to my kids. And the older that they get, the more I'm learning that I am their primary teacher, but I'm also sort of like the curator of all educational experiences. And so not everything has to come from me. It doesn't have to be me every time, but I need to be the one that's going out there and looking for opportunities for them and then determining like, is this something that's really going to help my child? What would be the most helpful? What is in alignment with what I want my kids to learn and the beliefs that we have? And then, what experiences do I want for them? And as a homeschool parent, we have so much more control over those things, but it's still important that we are seeking out, opportunities beyond even what we can provide as parents. So I love that you brought that up
And
too.
that frees you up. I think there's a lot of pressure that you feel you have to know everything and you have to understand everything. And it's okay. There are people with other skill sets that can help you. And I think it's really important to be able to accept help. I think it's hard for us as moms because we are everything to our children for so long. And when we have to reach out for help, it can be tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this kind of relates to Heather's question too, though. She said, knowing when a kid is just a late bloomer and when something is actually a sign of something more going on that needs to be addressed. Those lines can get awfully blurry at times. And I can definitely relate to this. I feel like sometimes it's hard to know what is something that I can handle myself and like at what point do we bring in an expert or a professional. So do you have any guidance on that? I know that you shared all of those really helpful sort of benchmarks about where kids should be at different ages, but like, how do we know if we need to go get more help?
Yeah, I think that like I said, that range is huge. So I think if you're seeing something that should have been developed early and that should have let's think about the building blocks. If a child's able to stack blocks on top of each other at the age of 2, and your child is still struggling to do that a lot later when they should have developed that already. I think we also have this intuition as moms. And sometimes we have to learn to trust our gut. I know for me, I'm always like, don't overreact, nothing, it's okay, everything's gonna be fine. So I know we don't want to be these, paranoid, overreacting people, but our guts have a really good sense of that as well. So I think that when you see that window, that range, even though it's large, when that's definitely bypassed and your child is struggling, with the next set of skills that they need, then that's the time to step in with some help. If by, let's say, 5 or 6 years old, they're still struggling with, interlocking pieces and they can only do a 2 to 3 piece or 4 piece puzzle, and they still need a lot of help with that, it's time to get some help, because by that stage, we should be looking at a child doing at least a 20-piece puzzle. And you'll know if you have a 5 to 6 year old, most times your child can do more than that, so yeah, so there's certain things where I think we can see that there's definitely a delay. But you're right, the line is blurry, and it is difficult to know. I think that in those moments where it is blurry, you've got to trust your gut. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that advice. I feel like that is so spot on. I know that we had an experience recently where we reached out for some professional support for one of my kids, and it was exactly, it was exactly that. Like I knew in my gut that what I was seeing was not what it should have been. And so we were able to get the help and support that this child needed. But yeah, that is so smart. I
It
love
is tough.
that.
But you know what? Being part of this community is so important as well, because I think that's you can feel really alone as a homeschool mom. And I think having a community of moms around you where you can bounce these ideas off and you can find out, is this something I should be concerned about? Did anyone else have this experience? It's so important. So having that community is vital.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. It's so helpful to be able to have other people to bounce those ideas off of. Yeah. So Elizabeth says, "Thank you, Lisa. He is in OT and speech, maybe OT once and speech twice weekly. He's already reading end of first grade level. Yay, that's awesome, Elizabeth.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
has speech apraxia, only been speaking for 1.5 years. He's come so far. Thanks." That's awesome. I'm excited to hear about the progress, Elizabeth. Woohoo! Yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah.
And then that's when it says to me that you've got all the support you need in this situation. And if there's so much progress in other areas, pencil grip is not your biggest issue right now.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. But also, way to go for getting all of that support for him. Like
Yeah,
that's hard to do as a mom sometimes, and that's awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, if anybody else has questions for Lisa, please put them in the chat. I know she'd love to answer them. And if
Sure.
you are watching the replay and you have questions for Lisa, please put those in the chat as well. And I'll make sure that she gets those and is able to answer them for you. While everybody's typing any last minute things, Lisa, do you want to tell us about what you have for us? I know that there were
Sure.
some resources that you had to share with our community.
Yeah. I would love to share these with you. So the first one that I want to share with you is that I have a monthly subscription, a super affordable $7 a month kind of subscription, and you get a pack of 20 plus printable fine motor activities every month, as well as some gross motor activities and some sensory play ideas with that, as well as access to our Volta videos with training and ideas and examples. So a lot of what we've talked about today will be in there, as well as a whole bunch of other things. So I'd love you to check that one out. Sarah will leave the link for you, and I would love to give you the coupon code for the first month to be $5 only. So we'll put that in as well. And then the second resource I have for you is, because it's almost Easter, and I'm sure that you would love some Easter resources, because I know now's the time when you're probably going scouring the net looking for things. So here's a whole bunch that you can use. Also, it's a great way to see what kind of resources and activities I include in my subscription. So there are 16 pages of printables that you can use, different activities to practice fine motor skills, things like tracing and dot to dot and coloring in the different numbers. And these things don't only work on fine motor skills, but on their other developmental skills as well, number and shape recognition, um, visual spatial skills, all those kinds of things as well. So you're welcome to that. That is a free resource, and we'll leave the link for that as well. Yeah, and like Sarah said, if you have any questions, feel free anytime to pop it in the group here, or and Sarah will let you know, or you're welcome to email me at lisa@learnwithconfidence.com. I'm happy to answer your questions anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I just put the links to both of those in the chat here, and they're also in the description of the video, so you can get them both places, the Confident Little Hands subscription, as well as the Easter printable resources. And the coupon code for the subscription is in the description of the video. So, Lisa, thank you so much for being here today. I learned so much, and I know that the moms in the group did as well. And I'm just so grateful for you coming here and sharing all of your expertise about fine motor skills with us. I know it's a topic that causes a lot of confusion a lot of times. And I'm just so grateful for everything that you did to explain and help make this easier for us. So, thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to encourage you all. You've been doing this from day one with your child. So keep on being that important person in their lives that helps them develop these skills. Yes, we need help sometimes and we need extra input, but you are the right person for the job for this as a mom, as your child's mom.
I love that. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will be back next Wednesday in the group at 3 o'clock Eastern with another class. So I'm looking forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great week. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this video, which was recorded live in the Homeschool Reading Community Group. This is a free Facebook group where I share tips and advice about homeschooling and teaching reading. You'll also find community with other homeschool moms like you, plus freebies, giveaways, parties, and more. I would love for you to join us over at the Homeschool Reading Community. Make sure that you check out the link in the description of this video for all the details.